This is the rifle Bladesworn build for World vs. World Roaming. I've chosen the rifle for a lot of reasons. So as a Bladesworn, you have access to the gun saber and dragon trigger, which is like your melee-ish attacks. You've got some range options there too, but those have ammo and long cooldowns, so you're not going to be in melee range the entire time. So I feel like if you're using a melee set on top of that, you're going to feel kind of bad because you're going to go in melee and you're going to want to spam abilities because being in melee is inherently risky. So you want to get in, do your damage fast, and get out. But if you're doing that with a sort of ammo playstyle where you have really long cooldowns on those ammo if you're spamming them out, then you're just going to run out of steam. So I feel like the rifle is better because you can pressure someone from afar and get their cooldowns out of the way, and then go into melee with your gun saber and your dragon slash and then finish them off. So you can still do pretty decent damage on the rifle without kill shot. You've got volley, and there's also an explosion, which is good synergy with the Bladesworn spec. So I feel like the rifle is nice, but if you really wanted to, you could take like axe shield. I've got that in my other set, or sword pistol's really good for some burst and mobility. But let's just get into the full build and I'll explain some of the decisions there. So I've got mostly Berserker's armor with Fireworks runes. Fireworks is nice because you're not taking the discipline trait line, because discipline is finally not necessary anymore with Bladesworn, because you've got plenty of your adrenaline or flow is gonna happen passively, and that means that you don't need discipline for adrenaline. The weapon swap cooldown is not as important either because you've got the gun saber and the dragon slash, which are working together nicely. Though lacking the immobilize removal is kind of harsh, you do have plenty of condition cleanse with mending, shake it off, and brutal shot on the rifle will remove immobilize. So that's kind of my solution to removing discipline and allowing you to take tactics, which gives you a lot of synergy with the build. So I've got mostly berserkers, but I have some assassins pieces because you want to get your crit chance up on this build, because not critting with dragon slash or any of your like heavy burst skills just kind of feels bad because it's a very burst oriented build. So I go for a assassin's rifle with accuracy sigil, which is more crit chance, and then an energy sigil because dodging is just the main way that this build survives is through evasion. And maybe a couple of assassin's pieces on the trinkets just to get to 85% crit chance or around there is kind of a good number. So let's just check out the traits here. I have strength, tactics, and Bladesworn. I go for peak performance because I'm using mending. If I were using the combat stimulant, then I would go for restorative strength. But I've decided that the Condi cleanse is way too important because if you're using your Condi cleanse from Shake It Off, well then you're limited on your stun breaks, and sometimes you want to use Shake It Off aggressively, like to remove a blind before you land like a heavy hitting attack. Then Great Fortitude is nice because it gives you extra vitality and ferocity. The build is a little bit squishy, so having 21,000 health instead of 19,000 can be a good benefit. And the ferocity bonus is a lot more damage than the Forceful Greatsword will give you since you're not even using a greatsword. And the might generation is nice on Forceful Greatsword, but I feel like the burst is more important on this build because this isn't like a go into a fight and sustain it. It's go in, blow your load, and then get out. And then you got Might Makes Right, which is going to give you some healing and endurance generation whenever you gain that might. Then in tactics, we have Leg Specialist, which is going to increase the damage dealt to movement impaired enemies, and it will immobilize whenever you cripple every 12 seconds. So we've got cripple on the rifle 3, on the gun saber 3, and that can be really useful for combining with maybe like a bull's charge. So like you land a ranged cripple which immobilizes, and then you can land your bull's charge after that, and then from there it just all snowballs. Then you've got Empower Allies, which is just going to give you more damage because we want to go for more damage. Shake It Off can be nice because it's an extra passive stun break on a low cooldown, but I feel like the build really wants to have the Empower Allies because you just want more damage, because once you hit that critical mass levels of damage, you can really start to burst people, and of course you have a limited amount of damage because a lot of your skills are ammo. So if you aren't going for a high burst build, then you're gonna run out of steam and it's gonna feel bad. So I feel like the extra power is really important. And then Vigorous Shouts is just gonna give you a lot of healing whenever you use a shout skill, and it's gonna lower their cooldowns. And of course you've got Shake It Off and For Great Justice as shouts, which are important skills to the build because the Fury uptime is really important for that crit chance. And you can also heal your allies, so it's a little bit of a supportive build. And then in Bladesworn, we have River's Flow, which is just going to give you more adrenaline whenever you heal yourself. You're pretty much always healing yourself because whenever you gain might, you're healing. And you're going to increase your incoming healing by 10%. And since this build already has really good healing on it, that's just going to synergize very well. Then you have a choice here between Lush Forest and Unshakable Mountain. I feel like Unshakable Mountain is better for a build where you're using a melee weapon because you're going to be in melee and taking a lot more risky situations. So you really need that extra barrier. But there's a difference in how these skills work because they're on ammunition usage, but depending on how much ammo you have left. So Unshakable Mountain is when you use the final round of ammo, which means if I have, say I have 2 ammo here, and then I've got 1 ammo left. When I use that final ammo, then it will trigger this. But Lush Forest will reduce all of your warrior weapon skills and utilities when you use the first ammunition. So if I'm at full ammunition and then I use an ammo skill, then it will give me that recharge reduction. So there's a clear difference in playstyle. One is a little bit more spammy and one is a little bit more greedy and conservative. Your rifle skills are generally going to be at maximum stacks of their ammo, which means that whenever you go out into your rifle, you just use your 2, 3, and 4 skills, and then you get 3 seconds free of cooldown on all of your other skills. And while that is a lot more squishy, it does give you a little bit more aggressive potential and defense potential, because it's lowering the cooldown on your heal skill. It's lowering the cooldown on, your elite, which is recharging all of your other ammo. So it's just really good synergy there. But if you're in a situation where you can't survive long enough to get that synergy, then Unshakable Mountain is definitely better. So you got a choice there. But I prefer Lush Forest in most situations. And then finally, you got Unyielding Dragon, which will give you might and more stun the longer you charge your Dragon Slash. And you can kind of just sit there and Dragon Slash and not hit anything, because it's a 7-second cooldown. And say you're like kiting and no one's on you at the moment, you can just sit there and channel your Dragon Slash and just heal like a ton, because it's 2 might per 1/4 second. And you've got the Mending Might, and you've got the Might Makes Right, just giving you a ton of healing there. And then just don't use the Dragon Slash and you just heal. So it's really strong. And it also gives immune to blind and unblockable on your Dragon Slash, which is really nice to make it not so counterplayable, because it's very telegraphed, the skill. So it gives people a lot of time to react to it, but not a lot of choices in decisions to react to it. As a Bladesworn, you will gain adrenaline, which is now flow, in combat automatically over time. So you don't necessarily need to hit things, but then you can expend that with Dragon Trigger, and whenever you go into Dragon Trigger, it will use up your flow and you'll gain charges per flow spent. So I'm out of flow now, so it's slowly going up, and then you can use that for a Dragon Slash. When you've got the full charge like this, it'll do maximum damage and give you the highest amount of stun from the Unyielding Dragon trait. And there are 3 different ways that you can choose to perform a Dragon Slash. You've got the melee Dragon Slash, which is going to do the most damage, but it is very easy to counterplay because you just stand still and do it, and you're sitting there charging. Or you can do the boost, which is a dash, and this is probably the best because it gives you mobility and it gives you the most time where the animation is occurring, because during the entire leap animation, you're hitting everything in between and at the beginning of your location and the end. So it's probably the most reliable to use the 2. And then the 3 is a projectile, which is kind of thin. It's a little bit shorter range than the leap, so it's harder to hit enemies that are at range with the 3 than it is with the 2. But you can do mind games with it, because, for example, if they are waiting for you to go on top of them for the Dragon Slash and they're waiting for your animation to see when you leap at them, then they might get tripped up by you using the ranged one. And also the ranged one doesn't put you at the target, so it could be a safer option if you don't want to go into the place that you're trying to do damage. So that is potentially a lot of gameplay there. And also, if you just don't have a target, you can just Dragon Slash for mobility, and it's a 7-second cooldown or an 8-second cooldown. So when you're kiting, you're often going to be able to use Dragon Trigger just to survive by not targeting. Or you could target and just stun them while they're trying to chase you. So yeah, the Dragon Trigger abilities are very strong, and you just gain a lot of health and might while you're charging them. You also have Trigger Guard, which gives you 2 seconds of Aegis. It's an ammo skill. It's a 40-second cooldown though, so you don't want to use it too spammy, because you can just use this to get Lush Forest. And then you've got Flicker Step, which actually ports you. And for example, if someone's line of sighting you like behind this tree, I could go here and then get a different angle on it. Or you can even port up ledges, which warriors were never able to do before. And yeah, there's a lot of play to getting closer to enemies, baiting them to think that you're going to use a Dragon Slash because you ported in, and then waiting till they dodge. So there's a lot of play to the Dragon Slash, and it just feels really good to use. One of the most fun skills to use. So there's the rifle as well. We're using the rifle. Rifle auto attack gives might whenever the target has vulnerability on them. The 3 and 4 will give vuln, so you can just sit there auto attacking after you've used those, and that'll give you might, which is sustain. But the main damaging skill is your volley, which shoots out 5 attacks, which can crit for like 2 to 3k when you've got full might and vulnerability, and that can do up to 10,000 damage if they all crit. So that's your big damage there. So usually want to use that after you use your explosive shell though, because this is an explosion, which will give you the Guns and Glory passive, which gives you ferocity. It'll also cripple the target, which will give you extra modifiers from the tactics trait line, like specialist. And then it'll immobilize because of that, which can allow you to bait out dodges after. And yeah, you just mainly want to use this because it increases your damage a lot. So explosive shell, and then use for great justice, and then you use volley, and you can see the damage increase quite a bit. And then you've got brutal shot. This will also give vulnerability and immobilize the target, similarly to explosive shell, but it's not amazing for doing damage because it does a dodge backwards animation, which makes it hard for you to be aggressive. It's more of a kind of balanced defensive skill. Like if you're trying to trade blows with someone and you want to evade their attack, then you can go with the brutal shot into the volley. But I do really like to use brutal shot because it removes immobilize first of all, but it's also great for kiting. So for example, if I'm being chased by these here, I can face away and then precast the 4 and then turn back towards the target, and then I'll evade away from the target and also shoot an immobilizing shot at them. So it's great for kiting, and it's another evade, so you really need those evades to survive on this build. And then finally you have rifle butt, which will knock the target back, and it will give you ammunition for all of your other rifle skills, so you can get more lush forest. Then once you press F1, or if you've used Dragon Trigger, you will go into your gun saber, which is essentially you've only got access to 1 weapon, but you also have the gun saber, so it's like 2 weapons plus Dragon Slash. So the gun saber abilities all do a lot of damage. The 2 skill is going to just do kind of a telegraphed animation in melee range, which will explode multiple times, so it's great against blind, and it will give you a lot of the Guns and Glory buff, which gives you ferocity. And then you've got the 3 skill, which can be used from range, but it's very spammable. You can use it 3 times in a row like this, and it's kind of AoE, so it's great for cleaving. It's great for kiting as well, because you can use it while you're not facing the target. And yeah, it's just really spammy, bursty, but you don't want to use it all instantly, because then if you don't finish the kill, then you're going to be out of your damage. So I generally like to only use 1 or 2 of them at the start and kind of save them for like the finishing blow. Then the Cyclone Trigger is a melee and range damage ability, which will shoot out multiple projectiles at nearby enemies, and will also do a pretty good amount of damage in melee. So I tend to use this in melee because there's limited ammo and it does more damage in melee. So you don't want to like use your Cyclone Trigger and your Artillery Slash, just spam them out and then you run out of ammo. You want to use them very strategically so that you get really good bursts. And also the Cyclone Trigger has a projectile block. You can see this little air here, that wind will block projectiles, which is great for when you're kiting and getting shot at from behind. That little wind is great for preventing rangers from bursting you with their longbow. And it's also great in melee range as well. Like if you're going against a nade hollow, you get up in their face and you use Cyclone Trigger. Then the break step is a leap in the direction. If you're targeting something, it'll leap at the target. So I generally don't use break step with a target. I like to detarget so I can control where it's going, because It generally is not good to use in melee range because it does not really that great damage, and the damage is actually at the initial location where you cast it, not at the end location. So you want to kind of like use it to get away from the enemy is I think what it's meant to be used for. But you can use it to get closer to the target obviously as well, and it will give you Fury, which is nice for more crit chance. So you shake it off as a cleanse and it will give you a stun break. Then you've got Bull's Charge. I generally don't like to use Bull's Charge with my Dragon Trigger. I like to use it with the Gun Saber abilities, so it's an evade, which is really good as well for kiting and disengaging, but also when you engage on the enemy, it's a 3-second knockdown. I like to use my Gun Saber abilities in there because when they're knocked down like that, you can land your Blooming Fire, get tons of your crit modifiers, and then just spam all of your Gun Saber abilities in there with your For Great Justice, which gives you Might and Fury to do a lot of damage. And then finally you have Tactical Reload, which just gives you 1 ammo to all of your ammo abilities. And since pretty much every one of your abilities besides Mending and Bull's Charge is ammo, and I guess Rifle Butt, you can get tons of synergy with using that. Generally, you start by using Explosive Shell, which gives you a lot of your damage modifiers and will immobilize. Then you'll For Great Justice and volley them for a pretty good amount of damage, which will also probably bait out some dodges. Then you can use Brutal Shot if you want to give them another bit of vulnerability and immobilize, or if you need to kite, or you can just use it to get some Lush Forest procs. And then by then, you'll generally have a decent amount of your Dragon Trigger. You can use the Flicker Step and the boost to get into melee range, and then from there you can just use your Gun Saber abilities, your 2, 4, and 3, and then you can decide if you want to continue spamming your Gun Saber abilities or you want to conserve them for Lush Forest procs. Generally, I don't like to save them too much because this is where your big damage really comes from, and if you're just saving them to get more cooldowns, well, these are the cooldowns that you want to be getting anyway. So it's like, do you want to kill the enemy or do you want to reduce your cooldown? So generally, yeah, you want to be a little bit more liberal with your Gun Saber abilities. But if you know that you can't really get the kill right then, you can go in, do one of each of your abilities, the 2, the 3, and the 4, and then you can detarget and use Break Step to get out and then go back into your rifle and then use the 2, 3, and 4 again, and then kind of repeat with the Dragon Trigger. Go in and do the Dragon Slash, and then you're in melee with that stun, and then you want to use the Gun Saber abilities while they're stunned for some big burst. There are some really cool tricks you can do on Bladesworn using the Dragon Slash. Mostly the boost is nice because it gives you a lot of mobility, and obviously it's useful for kiting, but you can use it to leap off of ledges. As you can see here, I'm going to escape this 1v3 situation by leaping to the other side of the river and just being free and out of combat now. I can just disengage. And that's something that, I mean, you could use a sword and get that on other warrior builds, but you usually don't use sword on other warrior builds. And here you can see that the port on the Dragon Trigger allows me to port up ledges if I'm right at the side of the ledge, because it's a pretty short range port, and disengage and single out enemies by forcing them to go around when they can't port up. And you want to be in those smaller scale fights. You don't want to be tanking outnumbered. This isn't a spell breaker where you can just tank a 1v3. So you do really need to position well with the rifle and the Dragon Trigger. And as you can see here, I'm getting, a little bit of pressure, but I'm able to keep resustaining myself because the Mending cooldown is just being really lowered by the Lush Forest. You could take Unshakable Mountain, as I said before, and I would prefer to use maybe like an axe shield playstyle with that, or a sword pistol playstyle. But someone gave me the idea that you can actually just, because you can only use one weapon, just put Sigils of Stacking Perception on your second weapon set, whatever you decide to use. Put some stacking precision on the other one, and then just stack that up, and then you've got a lot of crit chance to make up for that. So here you can see the unpredictability of the port there into my Dragon Slash, which allowed me to almost get a kill on the Weaver there, but we get them down, and yeah, we can do quite a bit of burst that's somewhat predictable, but also has unpredictability to it. The build will struggle dealing with classes that have a lot of CC or thieves that know how to time their steal, which will remove stability into my just save it for dragon trigger every time. So yeah, that's kind of an issue. You do have Shake It Off as your only stun break, so that's kind of an issue. But you do have a lot of ammo synergy, which can make up for that a little bit. But yeah, generally, you're going to have issues with classes that are going to have a lot of CC. However, you can reposition very well because the rifle is going to give you quite a bit of evasion. The build does survive due to evasion. You've got the Bull's Charge, the Rifle 4, you've got the Energy Sigil, and I would also use the Truffle Meat Soup, the one that gives you extra dodges, as your food, because that's going to give you more dodges, which is pretty good synergy with the build as well, but dodges in general are just really nice. And another thing is that because you have the rifle and then you have Dragon Trigger and Gun Saber, which most of those are on ammo, it means you can run out of damage. And in situations where you got to cleave down bodies and they've got projectile destruction, you're going to have issues with cleaving. So that's kind of why I play with Lush Forest instead of the mountain trait, because it gives you a lot more access to your ammo skills so you don't run out of damage. And while that does make you a little bit more squishy, you are going to have to decide whether that's how you want to play. I mean, you can go with the mountain trait for more barrier, but I like to go for the extra value and potential play. Here's a little bit of a chase situation. There's a Reaper on me. I'm trying to counter pressure them to get them out of Shroud. But yeah, when they're in Shroud, I kind of want to be not going in. My Reaper, though, gets a nice stun, and I land a Dragon Slash into that. So we're going to be able to get that kill very easily. And now we're going to push in on more of these players here. And I'm channeling, yeah, this is going to be a really nice Dragon Slash into the CC again. You can see that there's really good team play with the build because I'm shouting to support my allies there with Cleanse and a little bit of healing, giving them Might and Fury. And I'm also able to peel for my allies by stunning them with the Dragon Slash. It's a really heavy CC. And then the rifle can also immobilize targets. So when your team wants to like aggress on someone, you can just spam immobilize with the 3 and the 4 and you'll be able to get those kills. So we've got the Deadeye down here. We're going to stomp that. And my Necro is really low, so I'm going to precast a bit of my shouts on them. And then I'm going to go into my Dragon Trigger here and fully charge it. And I get 2 downs while they're trying to stomp the Necro. And then we just cleave that out really fast with the Dragon, the Gun Saber abilities. So that's pretty much how you want to be playing the Bladesworn. So if you like this content, then like the video, subscribe if you would like more of it, and leave a comment down below what you think about the build, and if you have any more suggestions. Also, put your in-game name in the comment, and I will give away a community chest to one of the commenters down below. And I will see you all next time.